Since I shared my last grocery budget video, I've been getting lots of requests to make another one like that, but make it with $20 instead of $15 and make it for this year's prices. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to Walmart. It's the cheapest grocery store in my area, and I'm going to be trying to buy as many groceries as possible with only $20. Then all week this week, I'm going to be making my family meals off of those groceries that I bought from the store. I am going to be making these meals as nutrient rich as possible and as delicious as possible. I know $20 just doesn't get you very far at the stores these days, but I'm really going to be making it stretch this week. Let's go get to the store. I'm bringing you along with me. While I'm at the store, I'm showing you the items that will hopefully be keeping me in my $20 budget for this week. First thing I'm picking up today is a 1-pound bag of lentils. Lentils are a great meat substitute just because they're so high in protein. Also, I just can't believe how high meat prices have been recently. Also, the quality of meat just hasn't been great either. But while I'm down this aisle, I'm putting a 1-pound bag of white rice in my cart. Next, I need 2 14-ounce cans of petite diced tomatoes, but unfortunately, I saw this would be putting me over budget in the end, but I am so glad that I looked further because I saw this huge 28-ounce can of petite diced tomatoes for only $1.48. I'll be splitting this between 2 recipes, so buying 1 larger can instead of 2 smaller cans is saving me 44 cents, and I am getting the same amount of diced tomatoes. Now I'm picking up a smaller 8-ounce can of corn for only 58 cents. If you look at the regular 15-ounce can of corn, it is cheaper per ounce, but I didn't need that much corn this week, so I'm just sticking with this smaller can of corn. Next, you just can't go wrong with a regular box of Jiffy corn muffin mix. I'm sure I'll find some use for that this week. I made my way over to the canned bean aisle, and I'm first grabbing a regular sized can of pinto beans. Next, I'm getting a can of mixed chili beans. If you don't use mixed chili beans often, they are so flavorsome and delicious. I definitely recommend them. Next, for a can of chicken, there are so many different types of canned chicken at the store, but I really do think the regular cans without any added flavors or seasonings are just the best, and they're also the least expensive. I checked high and low at the meat prices for a lot of different types of meat today, and I decided on this ground turkey for $1.98. You also always need to read the prices at the grocery store because I was thinking this ground turkey was over $4, but that was actually the price for the ground beef next to it. The ground turkey just wasn't labeled today. But now for a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, I'm also picking up this bag of flour tortillas. This will really stretch. Now I'm making my way over to the produce area, and I'm first going to be picking up this huge 5-pound bag of russet potatoes. I'll use that in a couple recipes, I believe. But next I'm picking up a bulb of garlic. Garlic adds so much flavor and nutrients to recipes for a really minimal cost. Now I'm on the hunt for an onion. I first saw these white onions, but they're over $1 a pound for an onion, and that's a little bit over my budget for today. Next, I saw these sweet and purple onions, but they're still out of my budget. I finally saw this regular yellow onion for only 84 cents a pound, and that is a lot better. So I'm just going to be going with this yellow onion for today. And then with the corner of my eye, I spotted this beautiful huge cabbage. I absolutely have no idea what I'm going to be doing with it yet, but cabbage is fairly affordable. It's also a powerhouse of nutrition, so I'm excited about that. Next, I'm getting this huge big bag of carrots. Here is everything that I'm picking up today to hopefully stay in my $20 budget for this week. So I first have my huge cabbage. This is heavy, so I hope this doesn't put me over budget. Next, I have my flour tortillas, my big huge 5-pound bag of potatoes, Jiffy corn muffin mix, and then I have my rice, can of chicken, vegetables that are frozen, and then I have my fresh carrots, onion, diced tomatoes, corn, lentils. I'm so excited about these. I have some fun recipes in mind for them, so can't wait to show you. But then I have my ground turkey, mixed chili beans, garlic, and then pinto beans. I don't know if I said those pinto beans yet, but let's get home and let's get to cooking this week. I'm excited. Let me tell you, I am so glad that we were able to stay in budget for this week. For a minute there, I thought we were going way over budget, but the first recipe we are getting started on is this turkey and rice chili. It is so good. So I'm just beginning by dicing up my onion. I'm just using a little less than a quarter of the onion for this recipe. A little bit of onion goes a long way, but to a large pot on the stove, add in a half a pound of ground turkey. Next, add in that diced onion. Just break that ground turkey up and cook it through. Once you do have your ground turkey cooked through, you are going to add in your minced garlic. I'm using about 3 cloves of garlic for this recipe. Add that garlic in there and give it a little stir until it's fragrant. It will only take a few seconds. Next, you're going to add in your can of chili beans. After you add those chili beans right in there, you're going to add in half of the can of the diced tomatoes from the store. This is the large can of diced tomatoes, so you're basically adding in about 14 ounces of diced tomatoes. With the rest of the can of the diced tomatoes, I'm just saving it in a little storage container in my fridge. So I'll just add it in there, put a lid on top, and put it in my fridge. That was definitely worth saving 44 cents. Next, I'm going to add in a half a cup of our rice. I'm not adding in that whole bag of rice, just add in a half a cup of it. Next, add in 6 cups of water, or you could use broth, whatever you prefer. Then for the seasonings, I'm just using some regular seasonings that I have on hand. Nothing too crazy. It's just 2 teaspoons of chili powder, a teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and then a half a teaspoon of oregano. Give this a really good stir, and you're going to let this simmer covered for about 20 minutes, stirring it occasionally. And while this is simmering away, I am getting started on our corn muffins. So into this bowl, I'm adding our box of Jiffy corn muffin mix. I'm also adding in a half a cup of water. I'm going to give this a good stir. Normally you add in a little less water and an egg for these corn muffins, but since egg prices have been really high recently, I didn't get eggs from the store, and quite honestly, we just haven't had a lot of eggs in our stores recently. But if you want to add an egg to this, you certainly can. Just add in a little bit less water. I do want to let you know, by adding the more water and not by adding the egg in, this is a little bit more crumbly than normal, but it still tastes delicious. So if you don't have eggs on hand, don't worry, you could still make corn muffins. They just will be a little bit more crumbly, but this is just going to bake in my oven according to the box instructions. And then once your rice is tender, you could serve this beautiful soup up. This dinner creates so many different meals out of it. It makes for so much food. You could always double it or half it if you'd like, though. My husband didn't even realize this was such a budget-friendly dinner. He said it was so flavorsome and delicious. It really is so good. You have to try it. Now we're making this turkey taco skillet, or you could kind of call it like a burrito bowl. But to a pan on the stove, add in the other half a pound of our ground turkey. Next, add in 3 cloves of minced garlic. Just kind of break that ground turkey up and cook it through. Cooking that minced garlic with the ground turkey together just really gives that ground turkey a lot of added flavor. But once your ground turkey is cooked through, add in a half a cup of white rice. And then after you add that white rice in there, you're going to add in our drained can of corn. After that, add in a drained and rinsed can of pinto beans. Then add in the other half of our diced tomatoes. So it's about 14 ounces of diced tomatoes left. It worked out super well just keeping it in the fridge in that container. Then add in a cup and a half of water. Then you're going to add in a tablespoon of taco seasoning. This is the last of the taco seasoning I had in my container. I've had this container for a really long time. Some of you guys probably remember I've been using it for a while, but just give this a stir and let it simmer for about 20 minutes covered, stirring it occasionally. If the liquid line does get too low while it's simmering, you could always add in a little bit more water until your rice is tender. But once you do have your rice tender, you could serve this wonderful dinner up. You could serve it however you choose to do so. You could serve it in tortillas. We served ours like this. You could top yours with cheese, sour cream, guacamole. This was so good plain. It didn't have any toppings on it. It was still flavorsome, delicious, and did not taste cheap at all. Now we're making this rice, chicken, and veggie skillet. So to a large pot on the stove, add in a tablespoon of olive oil, then add in a small amount of our onion. Remember, a little bit of onion goes a long way. Then add in half of our bag of mixed vegetables. These are just the frozen mixed vegetables. Then after that, you're going to give this a stir and let this cook for about 3 minutes. This is going to add a lot of flavor to the onion and the vegetables. Now add in about 3 cloves of our garlic. Just mince it in there, or you could chop it in there. Give it a stir, let that garlic become fragrant. Now you're going to add in the drained can of our chicken. So just drain that can of chicken and then add it right into the pot. Even if you're not the biggest canned chicken fan in the world, I really think you're still going to love this. The chicken is so flavorsome and delicious. Next, I'm adding in 1 cup of our white rice, and then for the seasonings, a teaspoon of paprika, half a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and then you're going to add in 2 cups of water. Give this a stir and let it simmer covered for about 20 minutes. You do want to stir it occasionally while it's simmering, just so that rice cooks evenly and doesn't burn to the bottom of your pot. Once your rice is beautifully fluffy, you could serve it up. I could say this over and over again, but I love creating dinners and meals that do not taste budget friendly at all. They taste high quality and delicious, but they seriously are like some of the cheapest meals you can make. This is absolutely delicious, flavorsome, and amazing. You have to try it. Now we're getting started on these $1 million burritos. That's what I like to call them. So you're going to need about a half a pound of lentils for this recipe. Make sure you use dry lentils. I'm just using half of our bag. Make sure you do rinse your lentils just in a strainer like this, just because there's a little bit of dirt on those lentils and you just want to clean them super duper well. Lentils are super high in protein and they're a great meat substitute, but I set my lentils to the side. We're getting started on the potatoes now. I'm just peeling and dicing 3 russet potatoes. You could always use more or less potatoes if you'd like. But over to this pan on my stove, I added a tablespoon of olive oil. Once the oil was hot, I added a little bit of our diced onion. I let that cook for about 3 minutes. Now I'm adding in 3 cloves of garlic. Let that garlic cook for about 10 to 15 seconds or until it is fragrant. Now you're going to add in those lentils that we just rinsed in the sink. After you add those lentils in there, add in the diced potatoes. Then you're going to add in a cup and a half of water, or you could use broth if you like. That would give the lentils more flavor. And then for the seasonings, I'm using a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of cumin, and 1 teaspoon of chili powder. Then I'm adding in a dash of cayenne pepper. The cayenne pepper gives it a little bit of kick, but it adds a lot of flavor in the end. Give this a good stir and let it simmer covered for about 20 minutes. I do want to let you know, the more flavors and seasonings you add to lentils, the better they are. That's just my opinion. But once your lentils are tender, all you have to do now is fill them in tortillas. I'm just using my flour tortillas. This made about 9 burritos, which is a huge amount of burritos for the amount of lentils and potatoes that we used. I also do want to let you know, if you want to freeze these burritos, you certainly can. These make for a great meal prepping burrito. Also, the reason why I call these $1 million burritos is it started when my husband and I were barely making ends meet. We used to do this with regular bean burritos or these lentil burritos. All I would do is I'd roll them up in flour tortillas like this, and then I'd crisp them up in a little bit of oil on the stove. So that would make regular burritos, whether they're just basic bean burritos or lentil burritos, that would make the burritos taste so high-end and delicious. If you've never tried it, you absolutely need to. It tastes like burritos from like a restaurant just by crisping them up for a couple of minutes on the stove. It really does wonders to burritos. Flour tortillas tend to be a little bit bland and boring, so I definitely recommend doing that if you're on a tight budget or even if you're not. But these burritos are high-end tasting, delicious, full of so many different nutrients, especially from those lentils. They're so good. Now we're getting started on this cabbage lentil stew. So to begin, I'm going to cut up my vegetables. I'm dicing 2 large carrots, and these carrots were really huge. Next up, I am going to cut up part of my cabbage. I'll show you in a minute. And then I diced my onion, and I peeled and diced about 5 russet potatoes. For the cabbage, I am just using about a quarter of the cabbage. I'm not using a ton at all, but cabbage really does go a long way. Now over to my large pot on the stove, I'm adding in a tablespoon of olive oil. Then I'm adding in the diced onion and the diced carrots. Give this a little stir and let this cook together for about 3 minutes on the stove. After 3 minutes, go ahead and add in about 3 cloves of minced garlic. Stir the garlic in until it is beautifully fragrant smelling. After that, you're going to add in the cabbage and potatoes that we just cut up. After you add those cabbage and potatoes right into your pot, you're going to add in the other half a pound of our bag of dry lentils. This stew is so good. If you want to use different veggies for this, you certainly can as well. And then after the lentils are in, I added in 5 cups of water, but of course you could use broth as a substitute if you'd like. Then for the seasonings, I'm using a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, a teaspoon of paprika, 1 teaspoon of oregano, and then a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Give this a really good stir. You're going to want to simmer this covered for about 25 minutes, stirring it occasionally until those lentils are nice and tender and all those veggies are tender as well. My house was smelling so good at this point. Those lentils and the cabbage cooked down wonderfully. I have never made something like this with cabbage and lentils, but I am going to be making it over and over again. It was so delicious, so high in so many different nutrients, and so unbelievably affordable. Now we're making this cabbage stir fry, and don't go knocking this recipe until you try it. I'm slicing up the remaining cabbage that I have left. There was a lot left. Then I diced up the remaining onion and I shredded my 2 large carrots that I had left. Now over to my large pot on the stove, I added in about a tablespoon of olive oil, then about 2 cloves of my garlic. This is the last of the garlic. Next, add in the vegetables, so the onion, the carrots, and the cabbage. As you see, I don't have super massive pots, but the cabbage will wilt down, I promise. I also added in the remaining half a bag of the frozen mixed vegetables. Then I added in 1/4 cup of water. I just didn't show me adding it in though, but let it cook for about 5 minutes covered. Then after that, you'll see the cabbage wilted down. Add in 1/4 cup of soy sauce, 3 tablespoons of water, and then 2 to 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Give this a stir and let it cook for about 5 more minutes or until the cabbage wilts down nicely, just like this. This is so flavorsome and delicious. We topped ours with a little bit of crushed red pepper flakes and sesame seeds. This is so flavorsome. Cabbage is full of antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. It has vitamin B6, fiber, and calcium in it, so it is just so healthy but yet so affordable. I would really love to have you over here, so make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.